Water boat from Kashmir. A lot happening in Kashmir. Soldiers are forcing multiple people out of their homes so they can move, or forcing them to rent out portions of their homes. Trust me, they will not see this money for this, and that's not a big deal for Kashmiris anyway. In the meantime, continued destruction of food rations. Winter's effing cold in the Himalayas and roads get blocked off. They did the same thing in the winter of 1990, and literally thousands of families starved to death, except they're doing it on a bigger scale now. So much is happening, it's hard to explain. All I want to say is that this is turning much more and more into Bosnia every day, but on a much bigger scale. I think that there is, I've been covering Kashmir to some extent, and also what Indonesia is doing to West Papua, which I apologize on my pronunciation, but you have these provinces that have always been, because they're primarily minority, they have, at least in the Indonesia and West Papua case, they have gold, they have huge natural resource assets. There's an economic dimension to Kashmir that I think people need to think about much more closely, which is that basically if you socially cleanse Kashmir, you open up a big real estate investment and tourism market. I mean, this is supposedly, and I believe it visually, I haven't had the privilege of visiting, one of the most beautiful places on earth. And you're talking about even things like skiing and, there's a lot of opportunity to make a lot of money there. So you can almost compare, there's a Bosnia dimension, there's a China and Tibet dimension. There's a U.S. in Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands or Guam dimension. When you tear up the at least partial autonomy that this place had. I mean, it still already was literally the most militarized place on the planet in the sense of, I think, highest proportion of military troop presence relative to population. And then, of course, you have China doing what they're doing to the Uyghurs. And I think in some ways, I was just thinking when you talked about people getting pushed out of their homes like that. I mean, Israel is the precursor of so many things. There's so many stories about Palestinians getting kicked out of their homes for Israeli occupations and operations, and the terror and horrifying consequences of that, and having a home gutted and destroyed by IDF soldiers, and then, oh yeah, fill out this form. We'll compensate you for the damage. Yeah, please. So,
hearing like food storage or food stores are getting destroyed, that's like basically a watchword for genocide.
It's absolute. I mean, look, if you go back to the RSS Hindutva philosophy, which underpins Narendra Modi's politics, and again, not Hinduism, and people who back Narodi just as Modi, look, the rhetoric of identity and the disingenuous, dishonest readings of that language is weaponized. I mean, Bolsonaro is using the language of sovereignty to cover for burning the Amazon, and talking about Macron's colonial mindset. Everybody can play these games, and so we're definitely not talking about Hinduism or the Hindu political tradition in a whole, but there is a far right and literally fascistic in the sense that early RSS writers, which is the paramilitary organization that umbrellas this, including the BJP, which is the party that Modi is from, you have writers openly praising Hitler back in the day, right? Like, I'm talking literal fascistic. I'm not saying we could find a trend line. I'm saying, like, they said what Hitler did, we should learn from. They also wanted to learn from early Israel as well, because it's ethno-state politics and an imagined past. I mean, that's everywhere you find it. Saudi, Iran, Israel, Pakistan, the United States, Brazil, Hungary. That's Russia. I mean, Philippines. That's always the same dynamic, and it's no exception here. But you will hear, and it really parallels Israel, the talking points that Tulsi did a couple of weeks ago, where she talked about how it was complicated and how there wasn't women's rights in Kashmir and the gay rights situation was bad. This is all Israel stuff. This is all like, oh, we just had to dump a bunch of white phosphorus on Gaza because they don't have gay pride parades. So, there's very close parallels there between the situations, and a very formalized partnership between Netanyahu and Modi. Here is Tulsi Gabbard, fresh off of backing off of Medicare for all. I guess talking about peace and the inherent dignity of all humans with Narendra Modi. This is an image. Yeah, this is just an image.